right, you guys, it's episode 91 of Inner Demons. And like always, I'm going to get straight to it. And I'm going to get straight to it. So, episode 90. I told you guys that, I was going to start delving off into some things that, are nothing that I really want to talk about, but I'm going to have to go over it at some point in Inner Demons. And, I'm going to start getting into it. So, and around this time, I told you guys that Turtle, a lot of the stuff that he was having to do with regard to his case was coming up. He had to go to court and he had to testify in court and he had to, honor the deal that he made because of, the way that he ended up getting caught up and how they okey-doked him on his Romero hearing and all that stuff. So, Turtle was already going through it. And, my time started to come up. And, it happened, well, really started one day when classification came up to my cell in Little Max. And there was a classification officer named Delacruz. And, he came up to my gate and he's like, hey man, he's like, Livingston wants to talk to you. And obviously I knew who Livingston was. Livingston was the one that basically spearheaded all these cases. He's the one that took me down, the one that took my regiment down. He was the main, these were his cases. And, when he said that, it was like, man, I wanted to try to find a way to just put it off. This was the inevitable. I knew that this day was going to come sooner or later. And I was trying to I don't know what I was doing in Little Max. I kept on biding time. I wanted time to just pass. I don't know if I was waiting for something to happen, like some kind of miracle to happen where it's like, hey, check it out. Everything's all good. Your case was dismissed, which I knew wasn't going to happen, but I just didn't want to cross, those bridges that I knew I was going to have to cross eventually. But being realistic, I knew that it was going to be part of the process and it was something that I was going to have to deal with sooner or later. So, when he came up and he told me that, I'm like, man, what's he want to talk about? And he was like, man, dude wants to help you, man. And Delacruz, I know he didn't have an agenda. He didn't have an agenda. He wasn't trying to get, a lot of the officers that were involved in my case, a lot of them wanted to be involved because they were trying to get promoted or because they were just trying to get that attention, a lot of them had different agendas. Delacruz was one that he came across as somebody that didn't have an agenda. He was just trying to do his job. And I honestly believe on some level, he genuinely really wanted to help some of us because he understood the situations that we were in. He had been there from beginning to end. So, he understood everything that was going on. And he even told me, he's like, look, man, I know things kind of fell apart in the beginning and you felt like these guys were playing you, give him a chance, see what he's talking about. You don't got to say nothing. You know what I mean? Just go down there and hear him out. So I ended up letting them cuff me up. They put belly chains on me and shackles, and they took me down to that ODR room. Now, the ODR room is that room that I've told you guys about before. It's called the Officer Dining Room. It's abbreviated ODR. And, it's called the Officer Dining Room, but nobody really goes in there and eats. They go and get their food and they eat somewhere else. But that room is used exclusively for burning people up. It's used for backdoor type of, secret squirrel meetings like this right here, like what I was about to go down there for. A lot of other cats in the past that had flipped or had cooperated, that's where they go. They go to the ODR room, and there's even a control booth that sits right out of that, right outside of ODR, and they can see anybody that goes in there. So a lot of the times, even those COs, they're the ones that pass on that good information. Another one burnt up. They see somebody coming out of there. Oh, shit, they burnt them up. And these guys will get on their cell phones and they'll call the fourth floor. Hey, check it out. Whoa, whoa, guess who just laid it down? Or guess who's talking? Or tell the fellas, man, pass the good news. Anyways, so I go down there. And you know, in the beginning, when these guys try to proposition me, when they try to proposition me, there was another guy by the name of Dan Messer, and I want to say Dan Messer or Bob Messer. His name was Bob Messer. He was a commander that worked with the Department of Justice, and you know, dude was a hard knock. He was somebody that I didn't really care for him. Just put it like that. I didn't care for him. You know, when these guys would continuously try to proposition me over the first 2 years when I hit the jail, this guy was almost like taking it personal. You know, at every juncture, every chance he got, he would, you know, try to pop up at the jail and be like, "Hey, man, you know," like that one time when they came and they did a search. They did an actual search. They came in, did a search warrant on our jail cells, and you know, they put me in one of the attorney visiting rooms, and I was posted up right there, and I had a clear view of everybody that was coming in and out of ADSEG out of Area 51. It's right across from the snake pits. So I'm standing right there in the window, and then you know, I see Bob Messer and Livingston come out. So I back away from the window. I back away. They see me. I go and I sit down. I don't want to talk to these dudes, but they come over there. And you know, I even knew that I didn't want them to come over there. The snake pits are right there. They can see, you know, what's going on. But these guys, they come over there, they pop the door, and Bob Messer's like, so what's up, boxer? You know, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I gonna do? He's like, well, what are you gonna do? He's like, the window of opportunity is closing. I'm like, man, I keep telling you, Messer, I keep telling you, man, you're wasting your time. You know, I'm not gonna talk about nobody else. You know, I buried myself, you know, and that's as far as I'm willing to go. You're wasting your time, man. Do what you got to do. And he told me, he goes, all right. He goes, you want to play hardball? He's like, well, he's like, something big's coming down the pike and it's gonna hit you right in the chest. You're gonna end up going down with all your homeboys. And I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do? There's nothing else you can do to me. I'm looking at life. What do you think? You're gonna hit me with the LWOP or something? You're gonna give me the death penalty? And he's like, just you're gonna see, you know, you're gonna see you had an opportunity, you had a chance to help yourself, but you know, you wanna be loyal. Loyalty only goes so far. And he slammed the door. It's almost like he was taking it personal that I wasn't, you know, taking the bait. So after that conversation, they ended up indicting me. That's what they ended up doing. That was the big thing coming down the pipe. But I already knew that that was going to come. So, you know, that if there was any chance at all for me to, you know, cooperate in the beginning, if I would have even entertained it, if I would have thought about it, he killed it. Because Messer was playing games. He was playing games. He was like, you know, he was trying to make a bunch of promises, and you know, I felt like he was trying to play me out of pocket. I didn't feel like he had my best, you know, my best interest at heart. I knew that this dude was playing games. You know, a lot of shit he was saying, it didn't even make sense. He didn't even know law. He was just throwing shit out, you know, a lot of shit at me. Anyways, so you know, when Dela Cruz tells me that Livingston's down there, you know, he's like, hey, he's down there by himself. He's down there by himself, so it's just you and him, man. You know, just go down there and see what he's got to say. So, anyways, I cuff up, I go down there, and you know, you guys got to understand, this is somebody that, you know, I considered to be, you know, this was my enemy. I considered him to be an adversary, at my nemesis at one time. When he came into, you know, my motion hearings, or he would come into my court hearings, and he come in there with his uniform and all his medals, and I look over at him and I just be mean mugging the dude, man. You know, I mean mug him, and I look at him, I just kind of give him that smirk, and he just stand there staring back. You know, I genuinely did not like the dude, because I felt like he was the reason why I ended up getting busted. He was the reason why, you know, I was where I was at. In all actuality, I was the reason why I was where I was at. I made the mistakes that I made that put me there in that county jail. I was the one that chose to get involved in criminal activity. He was an officer that was doing his job. So, he can't be blamed for that, but that's the way my thinking was at that time. So anyways, when I walked into the ODR and he was in there, he stood up, and like I said, I had shackles on and I had belly chains. I walked in and he's like, "What's up, boxer?" And I just looked at him. I'm like, "What's up, Livingston?" And I shook his hand and I sat down. And I let him control the narrative. What the conversation, what I wanted to hear what he had to say. You know, like I didn't know what I was doing. Obviously, this was, something that I wasn't looking forward to getting into. It was something that I honestly I just hoped would go away. But again, I knew it wasn't. So my thing was just to go down there, see what he had to say, and just kind of deal with it based off of the things that he had to talk about, and that's what I did. So he's like, "Hey, look, man." He's like, "Let's just start over. I know you and Bob bumped heads in the beginning, and I know that's kind of why everything kind of got shut down, or you weren't really on board. That at that point things were a little different. Now the fellas have turned their back on you. And he's like, you can see loyalty only goes so far. He's like, they think you're cooperating, but he's like, I know you're not cooperating with me unless there's somebody else that's, this is somebody else's case. And I can tell you right now, this is my case. But it just goes to show you that loyalty in this game, it doesn't exist anymore." And I'm just listening to him. The one thing I will say about him is that I honestly started to feel like he didn't have an agenda, because he was like, "Look, man, whatever you decide to do, that's your choice. I respect you as a man, no matter what you decide. If you decide you want to go and spend the rest of your life in prison, then I respect that. If you decide you want to turn your life in another direction, I'll respect that, and I'll do everything I can to help you get there. But it's going to depend on you. You're the one that's going to have to make the choices, and you're going to have to trust. You're going to have to give a little bit of trust in this situation. That's how it works." And and that's despite the things that happened up until this point. I understand that things were a little rough when Messer was part of this case, and he's retired now, so he's not a part of this no more. So I'm listening to him, and he tells me that a lot of this is going to depend on you and how far you're willing to go. And I'm like, well, he's like, "You got any questions?" And I'm like, well, the only question that I really had at that point, I'm like, well, if I decided that this is the route that I wanted to go, how much time am I looking at? Straight up. I mean, that was a legitimate question. They're asking me to sell my soul to the devil. And, it's something that I still had to think about. I still had to think about it. I couldn't see myself going that route and having to go through 10, 15 years. You're crazy. I'm about to fuck, the rest of my life off, my career. I'm about to sever ties with dudes that, well, they were already severed, but this was going to make it official. So he told me, he's like, "Look, I can't tell you how much time you're going to do. I can't tell you. I can't tell you if you're going to do 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 10. I can't tell you. If I tell you that you're going to do 5 years right now, then that can be misconstrued as a promise and it will end up sabotaging you later on. Defense attorney ends up hearing about it, they're going to end up, that will be a basis for pulling your deal. So I'm like, well, how am I supposed to trust that, man? I go ahead and put all my cards on the table. I trust you guys with everything. And then, what's to say that you guys are like, you know what? Nah, hey, good looking out, but nah, we're cool, man. That's not enough. Or nah, we're good with that. And he was like, I can assure you that that's not going to happen. And I can tell you that, what I will tell you is that you will be happy with, the ending result, as long as you're honest, as long as you're not caught lying, and, as long as you're willing to go the distance. So, that's all he gave me to hold on to. And that was it. And even over the course of the next, however long it took, 4 or 5 years, it took about another 4 years from that point. I continuously tried to ask that question throughout the process. Hey, how much? Come on, man, give me a nod and a wink, something like, am I going to go away and do some more time? Am I going to get cut loose when this is all over? And he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me shit. He just kept on telling me, you're going to be okay, man. You're going to be happy. That's all I can tell you. So the first case that ended up coming up, he's like, look, at that point, you guys need to understand, all my co-defendants were gone. Everybody that had got indicted with me were gone. So, my whole thing is that I don't have to be a percipient witness. I don't have to go in there and give facts about things that people have done. I don't have to go in there and give facts like that. I'll go in there and talk about how gangs work and, the history of gangs and just the functions and all that stuff. But as far as like the details of what these guys did, everybody that I got indicted with were gone. So I was looking at it as, what? It's no better. Once you get up in that box, it's the same. That box represented everything, that we're against. Growing up in the streets, getting up in that witness box, somebody that gets in that box, they're done. I mean, you have an X on your back for the rest of your life, and you're looked at as trash for the rest of your life. There's no way to pretty it up. It is what it is. But the last little sliver of integrity I was trying to hold on to was like, well, you know what? At least I don't have to, be a percipient witness. At least I'm not going to be the one to put those nails in people's coffins. Other people are going to have to do that. So, he's like, one of the first cases that, well, before I even get to that, it was like, the first thing that you're going to have to do is sign a proffer agreement. A proffer agreement is basically like you get immunity for a day. And, you got to go through your whole history, everything that you've been through. And, you got to lay everything out. And nothing that you talk about can be used against you. It's just basically you're throwing everything out there and saying, look, this is what, this is what I know. This is, what I was involved in, and so on and so forth. So the proffer agreement is kind of a protection for me as well. So, he tells me that after we go through my history, everything that I've been through, and, I lay everything out, he tells me there's a case coming up that, I'm going to be required to, take part in, and it's the Palmas case. Now, the Palmas case was a case that involved, there was a number of defendants that were involved in that case. Basically, there were a bunch of young Norteños that were out there running around in San Jose. They were out there killing Sureños. I don't remember exactly how many homicides they had, but it was a huge case. It was one of the biggest cases they had, a gang-related case that they had out there in San Jose, a street gang case. And, they had so many co-defendants in that case that they actually had to build a special courtroom for that trial. It ended up, they ended up severing, breaking it up to different trials so they didn't have to use that courtroom after all. But, there was a lot of defendants in that case. But the only part of it that I would have to participate in involved 4 individuals, and they were like the main 4. I want to say it was Shorty, Negro, Gangster, and another guy that I can't remember his name off the top. But these guys were some of the main ones. And these guys were kids, 18, 19, 20. They were in that age range, except for Shorty. Shorty was like their leader for EHP. Eloy Palma. So anyway, when Livingston talked about this case, he was like, the only thing that you're going to be required to go in there and talk about is, the history of the NF, the history of Norteños, how everything works. The guys that are going to come in there and actually testify about the factual stuff are co-defendants that have flipped in the case, are other people that, were part of my case that ended up flipping. But they were guys from San Jose that knew these guys. They grew up with a lot of these guys. I didn't know them. I didn't grow up in San Jose, so I didn't know none of these dudes. But, those were the guys that were going to go in there and bury these dudes. So, this was something that I had to think about. But the one thing, like I said, and it doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, it doesn't make a difference, and I'm not trying to split hairs. Based on the fact that I didn't go in there as a percipient witness doesn't really mean shit. But to me, it meant something. At least I wasn't going to be the one to go in there and bury these dudes. I was just going to go in there as, like they say, an expert witness, somebody that could break down, the history, the functions, how what the cause was about, what Norteños are required to do, how street gangs work, things like that. So, anyways, when this was all being talked about, this case, literally, it was like a month away from happening. It was like right there, damn, practically happening at that point. It was like, we're already, they're picking a jury right now. This is something that's going to be happening within the next couple of weeks. And, it was like, man, I got a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach when he said that. It was like, man, something that I really was not looking forward to. I wasn't looking forward to it, but I knew it was going to have to be part of the process. I couldn't mind fuck myself like that. I had to just I either had to be on board or I wasn't going to be on board, but I couldn't straddle the fence. I either had to be all in or I wasn't. So, I made a decision at that point that I was going to, trust in the process and do what I had to do. So that's what I did. Now, I'll get into the details of what happened, during that trial. Some of you guys are going to trip out on it. I actually had a chance to talk to Shorty and some of these other dudes that, that were in court, the defendants in this trial before we went in there. They ended up putting them in a court holding tank, like right there next to me and another guy that was going in there. And we had a chance to talk to him. And Shorty was familiar with my situation. He was like, "Hey, B," and he could have been just telling me what I wanted to hear. I understand that too. But he was like, "Man, it's fucked up what the homies did to you, bro." And I told him, I'm like, "Yeah, hey, Shorty." I'm like, "Listen, bro, it's a fucked up situation. This situation's fucked up, but I'm not going in there to bury you, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going in there to bury you. I'm gonna go in there and try to just get up out of there And he was like, man, I appreciate that. And you guys are going to hear how, I really did try to do that. And, some of the things that happened during that trial. Again, this is not something that I look forward to talking about, but it is what it is. And it's not like, people don't know. I've been transparent about it. And, I got nothing to hide. I don't try to pretty it up. I don't try to make it seem like it's something that it's not. But that is one of the only things that I could hold on to, is that I wasn't a percipient witness. I didn't go in there with any information about these dudes, the crimes that they committed. I didn't know them from shit. I didn't know these guys before they went into county jail. They committed these crimes while I was in the jail. So there's no way I could have gave up information that put them away. I just talked about the kind of stuff that I'm talking about with you guys right here on YouTube. The same stuff. But a lot of people don't understand is that when you talk about this stuff, it's the same thing. You're talking about stuff that you're not supposed to be talking about. So some people can look at it as you're giving up information. Other people that talk about things on YouTube, you won't find nobody that's active on YouTube. Just trust me on that. All content creators that are putting out information on YouTube, if they're talking about gangs and they're talking about the intricacies of gangs, how they operate and all those details, they're speaking, they're navigating waters that they shouldn't be in. No active gang member is going to say, you know what, it's okay to talk about that kind of stuff. It's okay because you're not really hurting nobody directly. They're going to be like, you know what, you're giving up the gospel. You're giving up the blueprints. You shouldn't be talking about that stuff, period. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. So, at least I can say that I'm straight up about, what I talk about and what I do. That's something that, not everybody can say. But I'm only concerned with myself. I don't point fingers at nobody else, and I try to stay away from that. But anyways, the next episode, I'll go into the details, about the Balmas case. The one thing I will tell you guys is this: when this was in motion, the Balmas case, another case came up. The Operation Valley Star case came up, and they wanted me to participate in that case, but I was adamant that I wasn't going to do it. I knew Baki, I knew, Wino, I knew Bubba, and, Gabe got a jail, and all them cats from Salinas. I knew them cats, on a level that was beyond the NF, on a level that those were my guys right there. And I told them straight up, I'm not doing that case. Straight up. I'm not going to participate in that case. I'm not going to, say anything about any of those guys. It's a different kind of relationship. That's like family. Even though I'm sure, them all still being active, they would have to say, hey, fuck B, B's, B did this, B did that. B went out ass backwards or whatever. I understand that. I understand it. But I still wasn't going to go in there, and I wasn't going to have nothing to do with their cases, period. At some point, I actually thought that might become an issue because I was adamant about it. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that case. Straight up. That one, Operation Black Widow, like, you guys are trying to burn me up on another level, man. And I'm just not going to do that. And they stood down. They stood down. I didn't have to go in on those cases. And, they ended up having another NF member that was there in the Santa Clara County Jail, Sammy Wino. They had them go and testify in Operation Valley Star. And, he's the one that sat there in the courtroom and had to look at Baki and, those other brothers. And I talked to him after, he went over there, and it hurt me to even hear, him describe some of the things that happened when he had to go through that, in that trial. But anyways, I just want to get you guys out something tonight. But anyways, you know, in the next episode, I'll go into the details about everything that happened. Those of you that have read my book, you guys should already have a general idea of some of the things that happened, you know, the way that I try to communicate to their families, some of the things that were said in that trial, some of the things, the antics that the lawyers were doing. Like there was just some comical shit that happened throughout that process. And I know there's nothing funny about what happened to those youngsters. Some of them ended up flipping later on. I know that at least Gangster did. I'm not sure about the other ones, but you know, after going through everything that they went through, they ended up laying it down later on, which is a shame, you know. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons. I know it was a short one. I wanted to get you guys out at least something tonight. I was gonna drop a war story, but it got late. You know, I had to take care of something else that kind of distracted me earlier, so I didn't get that out. I might end up dropping that for you guys tomorrow night. So look for me to bring back, you know, the war stories, at least one. Some of you guys have been asking me to bring that series back. I might go there, you know, every now and then. I've been focused more on the inner demons and the Mexican mafia stories, but we'll see. Anyways, with that being said, again, this episode 91 of Inner Demons. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys had a good day. With that being said, this is your boy B, and I'm out.